Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another deck profile. This time I am here with the winner of the All-Star Showdown, also the first ever national champion, Jordan Markle. Today we're going over his Vegeks deck list. Jordan, how you doing tonight?
Man, I'm doing great. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, doing good. Coming off a big win, must be feeling pretty solid. I know there was a lot of controversy in certain Facebook groups where people were kind of doubting you, but it's got to be pretty dope to, put things to rest, so to say, and, put out the results, right? I mean, you obviously did put out a crazy finish in this tournament.
Dude, the job's never done, but no, it did feel really good to win this one.
Nice. So, okay, you played Vegeks. So, actually, me and you went to a tournament last weekend. I know you were contemplating playing Vegeks, but you didn't really want to play it then. So, what changed your mind from then to this weekend?
So at that weekend I was on Go Tanks pretty heavily. I really liked my Go Tanks list, and I just had more testing with it. But then, like, throughout the tournament in New Jersey, I found that Vegeks is quite overpowered. I did split my sets with Vegeks at New Jersey, but the deck was just so strong that I felt like I had to play in this All-Star Showdown.
So we talked about this. We talked about a scenario where, like, in Vegeks, for example, it is we both said it's crazy when you go off, but sometimes your mills can be, like, really bad, right? So did you feel like the deck was just generally consistent and most of the time you will mill well, or did you feel like it was kind of like a 50-50 crapshoot?
Surprisingly, I think my mills were pretty good. There definitely was a few games where I felt like I was hitting like below average, but for the most part, like, we were in a single elimination, like, 32-man tournament, so my mills were at least, like, good 66% of the time, you know what I mean? So it was good enough to get me match wins.
Gotcha. So one more thing I want to ask you before we get into the actual list itself. So I know you played 60 cards, Rios played 52. Theoretically, his deck is going to be more consistent. Now, do you think that consistency change is significant, or do you feel like 60 is just totally worth it for the Bibbidi power? Like, what are your thoughts on, like, the higher versus lower deck count for Vegeks?
So I think if you can trim it down, it's probably better just overall consistency wise. Like, I didn't have too many issues with it, like I said, but I think the way Rios built his deck, I think if you can cut it down to that point, it's just better. It's just tough to fit all the cards you want to fit in. I know, like, in my list there's maybe a couple cards I could have cut, maybe get it down to like 56 cards or something like that. Probably would be for the best. And I also only like playing, like, the minimal amount of cards, so it was very tough for me to play 60 cards.
Right.
I know in, like, my other decks I usually try and start with 50, and then if I need to I'll bump it up a little bit. But yeah, overall it still worked out at 60, but if you can cut some cards, I think it just helps the overall consistency of the deck.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's get into the main deck here. Obviously, all of the Vegeks stuff, mill, play, nothing too spectacular here. One thing I will ask you, though, did you find that, like, your unison was constantly dying, or do you feel like, players weren't prioritizing the unison, or were you just, like, able to protect it pretty well?
Yeah, honestly, like, with only playing the deck a limited amount of time, I really haven't played this deck too much. It was really weird when I would mill it going first, turn 1, and then I'd pitch a card to give it 2 counters, and then it would still end up dying sometimes, like, people were attacking into them.
Right.
And so that was really weird to me, because I was like, do I actually discard a card from my hand to give this, like, unless, like, the card was like a boo or something that could help me on that turn.
Mm-hmm.
Do I really want to discard a card that could help me later in the game for a unison that's probably gonna die? So, like,
right, you're like, am I pitching a card for no reason, right?
yeah, and it's really tough to judge, because you don't know what, like, some of these decks can do, like, off rip on turn 1. Like, obviously against the Vegeks mirror match, I feel like you don't want to discard, but then there's still times where it's like, oh, I want this card in the drop to use it, so I'm just gonna do it anyway.
So that makes sense. We need certain cards in the drop for sure, but then, like, this is one of your main win cons in the deck, right? So I don't know. Sometimes would you cast it later for multiple energy to get the -4 off, or would you just have to feel out the matchup to see if you can, like, build up those counters?
Yeah, I didn't actually get the -4 off that much. Like, maybe a few times, like once or twice throughout the entire tournament, because people do swing into it. They want to keep it at, like, 3 counters is usually, like, the number. They're like, if we can't kill it, we'll keep it at 3. So there's no way you can get up to 5 in one turn. Without using the +2, of course.
Gotcha. And sometimes the 15k double strike with a Bibity is enough, right? So
exactly, for sure.
That definitely gets there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, some of the utility cards: 4 Power Burst, 2 Protector of the People. I've seen a few lists main deck Protector. Do you really feel like you just need it, like just for what, like Obuni and maybe some other things?
I think in the format we were in, it was just like good against like potentially the mirror match, potentially like I know I played Skillless in the tournament, very good against the Skillless deck. It just buys you an extra turn, and I always like playing cards like that buy you extra turns, Flying Nimbus, like I mean dormant potential, etc.
Yep.
I've always been a fan of Nimbus, even in aggro decks, like back in the Storm days. I still played Nimbus in my Storm deck. But just getting that extra turn lets you, like, you know, win on the crackback. So I thought 2 Protector of the People was enough to see it when I needed it, and then if not, I could pitch it or charge it, and it didn't really make too much of a difference.
Nice, so it worked out pretty well. And then 2 Dark Power, Black Mass Sand. Do you ever wish you played more? Was this card relevant? I mean, it is actually pretty good against a lot of things this format. Obuni, Skillless, just to name a few things. So, yeah, do you wish you played more, or was it worth it?
I think 2 was good. I had 2 in the side as well for like the matches where I really wanted to see it. But like a 1 mana, you know, 15k attacker, it takes a life. Sometimes it helped on Awaken. But no, it definitely was really good all weekend. I played it quite a bit, and just being that 1 mana 15k attacker and you know, helping you awaken and stuff is just great.
Nice. All right, moving along. We have our turn 1 plays. So I really like that you play 4 Majin Buu. I see a lot of lists play 3, but I mean, when you don't have Trunks, it just kind of feels like the best turn 1 play. But then you only played 2 Revive Ravagers. So I know players usually play like 4 to 3 copies of this card. So talk about these ratios. Obviously 4 Trunks. Did you like 4 Buu, and then why only 2 Ravager?
Okay, so this might be actually a hot take, but I think 4 Buu and 4 Trunks are definite, like, obvious. You need to play 4 of each, I think. Buu is just helpful in cycling, you know, drawing cards.
Yep.
And then Trunks obviously sets up like an engine within the deck that's just very powerful for 1 energy. So you can't really beat it. And then also for the Ravager video, this is the hot take. I don't think this card is actually very good in the deck. I played it maybe a few times, and every time I felt like if I had like a better Overwhelm, I would have just rather had that. For example, what's the new Mass Sand, the one that can...
The Secret Identity?
Secret Identity, yeah. I feel like, honestly, moving forward, I'd probably swap Secret Identity into the main for these. Just because there were some times where there was, like, annoying blockers and other stuff on the board that I think Secret Identity would have been better, like, on my kill turn to, like, remove stuff. Instead of playing, like, a 15k critical that it really didn't need at the time.
Gotcha. So not super impactful. Maybe you wouldn't play it going forward.
True, yep.
And then we have the 3 Reluctant Vegeta, the 3 Splintering Mind. So this is what you were talking about before with the engine that the Trunks Elite Descendant sets up, right? So Splintering Mind, how many games did it win you? Was it, you know, worth playing over the weekend?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, Splintering Mind was very good throughout the weekend. Definitely used its effect a bunch of times. Obviously, removing a threat's always good, but the Sparking 7 effect came up a lot. Because it's very tough sometimes to get Vegeks life down, because you're trying to like clear their cards and clear their unison, so you end up having a high life total. So it helps you awaken, it helps you deal free damage. And yeah, so it was great all weekend. And the Vegeta Reluctant Reinforcements, just being able to mill 5 after the Overwhelm, fuel your drop area, fuel your board potentially. That whole package is just really good. I definitely doubted it at first, and then after playing, it's just so good.
So here's one question I have, because it just seems weird on paper. Maybe you can like shed some light on it. So with the Splintering Mind, like, you're taking 2 of your life to take 1 of their life, right? And in the Vegex Mirror, you know, you could die really quickly to a Bibity, right? So that worked out okay, like, just to do that?
I think the only time in the mirror match you really want to do that is if you know you can go for game. For example, if they're at 3 life, it's pretty okay to Splintering Mind them down to 2, and then any attack that you swing with is pretty much lethal if you have the energy open for Kai and have Bibities.
Gotcha.
So in that life scenario, I think if it's any higher, you probably don't use the effect, because like you said, you don't want to like go down in life too much too fast, because then you can die on their turn if they can somehow stop you.
Gotcha. So you don't want to really do it willy-nilly. You want to do it, you know, at the right opportunity. Gotcha. So then you played a 3-3 split of the Vegex line. This seems pretty standard, but one thing I do want to ask you about, it seemed like Justin Rios chose not to play Space-Time Synthesis. Instead, he played the Champ Pack Promo. So that was one of the main differences between your guys' list. What do you think about that engine versus this engine?
So I think the Champ Pack Promo is actually pretty solid. I had never played with it, and I had considered adding 2 to the deck for some other cuts. Still would have kept the 3/3 for these because I think the Vegeks Space-Time Synthesis is actually a really good card, and if you can get back a Bibbidi with it, like that's just so clutch. Like it doesn't happen all the time, but if you can, that's so clutch. And I mean, obviously the 7-drop goes in either way with either of them.
Right.
So going forward, I could definitely see adding some of the Champ Pack, maybe do like a 2-2 split, maybe make some changes. But I think both are good in their own right.
For sure, yeah, I agree too. I think some type of combination of the two is probably pretty good. So 4 Hidden Power Supreme Kai. Most lists I've seen play 2 or 3. You played 4. Why and was it good?
Oh yeah, so with the way the deck works, obviously you mill so many cards, and East Kai you can't East Supreme Kai you can't really get back. Like you can't like use other cards to get it back. You can't like really recycle until you shuffle your deck back, which I didn't really shuffle my deck back, I think, at all the entire tournament. Like I always tried to go in without doing that because then you lose all your Bibbidi power. You have to wait, mill some cards. So anyway, that's why I played 4 to see it, because you obviously want to have it, and in multiple copies it doesn't hurt. Like I'll hold it in my opener. I'll hold as many as I can because with the Bibbidi it's basically 2 free damage.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So you hold it in your opener because it doesn't really benefit you to mill it, and in Vegex you don't really need like super specific turn 1, turn 2 plays most of the time, right? Like you do want your Trunks Overwhelm, but besides that, it's like not too crazy. So seeing that in your opener makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
So okay, we're talking about Bibbidi. Obviously, everyone knows what the card does. It's super busted. What I actually want to talk about here are what are your thoughts on what should happen with this card? Do you think it's balanced? Do you think it should go? What do you think?
Okay, so I mean, yeah, obviously we know what it does, and I think it's way too powerful of a card to be in the game. I know it does have the super combo tag, but even then, if you compare it to other super combos, if this one's at 30 plus K, like that just doesn't make sense.
Right.
It should be like super combo or something. 3
super combos in 1, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like I just don't think it's a fair card. I think that it is the main issue with the deck being how aggro it is. You don't really have to have a big hand size to be able to win, and a lot of times I did have a very low hand size and just had a couple Bibbidis, couple Kais, swing with a 1-drop 4K and just go in, and it's like everyone's like, well, I barely have any energy. You can do it so fast. It just doesn't seem very fair to me. I think it should be banned.
Gotcha.
So I mean, who knows what will happen, but that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Right. I mean, from my perspective and just having an idea of like how Bandai has handled things in the past, I don't think it'll make it to set 11. I personally wish it would be limited to 1 with the ultimate tag on it. I think that'd be pretty cool. I know you're not a fan of 1 of, so we'll leave that where it is. Another card I want to ask you though, Koitsukai. Koitsukai is another card that's actually on people's radar to potentially be banned, and I think it's actually for good reason, because this card, really does stop a lot of interactivity. Your opponent can't really topo you, they can't rival Goku hit, and then in set 11, it's actually a card that kind of makes the whole new baby deck like irrelevant, because the whole deck is counterplay battle cards, right? So with that in mind, what do you think about Koitsukai?
So I don't think Koitsukai is really ban worthy, but I will say that Bandai's philosophy on banning cards that we've seen in the past, I definitely could see this card potentially getting hit, like you said, with the baby stuff. I haven't looked into a lot of the new set stuff, but I mean, I've obviously heard, what baby does and stuff. And I think this could potentially be on their radar just because they banned all the ramp stuff because of, other cards coming out, and they didn't want their ramp decks to, be hurt or whatever. So
right, yeah, it seems like they do want to ban cards that automatically destroy decks, right? Like they banned Violent Predator, that was one example. I think this could maybe see an errata to mono black leader only. I think that could, because it sucks that it's an SR from a draft box, right? So if you ban it, a lot of people lose out, which definitely sucks. I think maybe errata to mono black leader only, but I mean, well, time will tell. We'll see.
Yeah, right. I think an errata would be pretty decent for it, to be honest. Yeah,
that'd be pretty cool. And actually, what's really nice is they announced in the set 11 store championships that they're going to be handing out errata packs. So that's something we needed for a long time. Very, very cool that Bandai is doing that. So sideboard, Jordan, just take it away. Walk us through the sideboard. What did you need for what matchups?
All right, so I sided max power Kamehameha for like Sin Shenron. You know, it's just an extra negate if I would really need it. But more or less just to kill like big threats like the big Sin Shenron blocker. Didn't really think about it too much outside of that. I know it's just a very good utility card that I could side in if I needed it. To protector for like, you know, the aggro matches, aggro mirror matches. Not so much Vegeks just because of how the way the deck works. Protected people usually doesn't stop Bibities, so
Right.
you're I just didn't side it in versus that, but like other aggro decks like maybe Kid Q and some other stuff.
Yeah, I can see it being good against like AOD too.
AOD as well, yep, because they build a big board. Definitely could see it. Unexpected turn, you just said it, AOD. You know, sided them in. Never got to actually play the card, but did side them in one time. Black Power Massan, again, Kid Q, any decks that just try and spam the board. Not necessarily Vegeks, because, I mean, it's decent against Vegeks, but it doesn't stop, like, the big attackers, so it's not too relevant. But, like, other decks just, like, try to summon a bunch of guys that are cheap. Next, we have the Demonic Absorption. For Invoker, I didn't really need to sideboard this card. I didn't think Invoker would be played that much, but just on the off chance, you know, I see it in like mulligans, hold it onto it. They don't pitch it. I can kill their Vegeta, you know, standard stuff. But other than that, that was really the only reason for that card. Then I got the 2 Vegeks. I sided it for like aggro matches as well. I thought it would be good against Vegeks, but I didn't side it in because I wasn't sure. And in finals, I was like, excuse me, I didn't want to put it in and it not be helpful enough. So I just left with my main deck configuration, and you know it ended up working out.
Yeah.
But potentially could be good against the mirror match. And then the last card was just 2 Secret Identity Massan. Like I said, I think this card can move into the main board potentially for some cuts. But even if it stays in the side, just a standard good removal card. Gets rid of many threats. If it gets late in the game, you know, it's good against the Booney. It's good against a lot of other things. But just a standard overwhelm, and it's a 25k attacker, so you can't really complain about that either.
Gotcha. All right, so that is the deck list in its entirety. 2 questions, Jordan. One, do you want to see more tournaments like the All-Star Showdown in the future?
Yeah, honestly, like I know, like I don't play on tap too much, and I know I'd you know, give it some flack, but the tournament ran extremely well, and you know I had fun all weekend. So I definitely think more of these would be great for the community.
Dope. And then final thing, any shout outs, anything you want to say as we wrap up the video?
Yeah, for sure. First off, shout out to you, Joey, and Crossworlds, Marcus, for, you know, doing the stream and whatnot. Thank you all you guys for all your help. And then lastly, thanks to my team, Dalen Mac, for throwing the event. You know, shout out to my boys on the team, Max Rarity Gaming. You know how we do, man.
Awesome, man. Jordan, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.